Please welcome Charlotte Church in conversation with Jenny Anderson from Quartz.
So if you're British, I'm going to start by saying this is the Charlotte Church that you're thinking of.
Hiya!
If you're not British, I would like to tell you that Charlotte Church is very famous.
I'm a singer.
She's a singer, an entertainer, a social activist as well, and she's starting a school. So I think the appropriate place to start is you have the voice of an angel, you have a family, you have a good life. Why on earth are you starting a school?
I've been asking myself that very same question over the past couple of months. So I suppose it started when I had children myself, and I just became more and more interested in child development and cognition and how these tiny little beings went from completely vulnerable, helpless humans into fully formed, amazing people. So it started there, and then I started the natural progression, then was education. And so I became really interested in education and just read vociferously anything I could lay my hands on. And then it came to them being of school age, so we started going around and looking at local schools, and it just didn't quite feel right, and everything that I was reading about school readiness wasn't sort of in line with what the mainstream system was doing. So my two went to a Steiner kindergarten then for a couple of years, which was gorgeous. The kindergarten was lovely, but then when it got into the formal education of Steiner around the age of 7, the sort of mysticism and dogma got the better of me, and we just thought that that wasn't quite right either. And so then we homeschooled both of them with the view, sort of like, oh gosh, we've made a boo-boo here, this alternative education doesn't seem to work quite as we thought it would, and we'll homeschool them for a year with looking to put them back into the mainstream system, just so you know that they're up to date. And then that just started going really well. It was really enjoyable. I was learning so much about my kids and how they learnt, and teaching in general, and the things which I was really interested in anyway, which were important to me. And then last year, because my daughter now is coming up to secondary school age, we've been looking at our options, and we live in Cardiff in South Wales, and there aren't very many alternatives to the mainstream education system. So we went to a democratic school in North Devon called Sands. And it was going there and seeing and feeling the authenticity of the place, and how incredible the kids were that were there, how engaged, how curious, how confident they were, that the next day I woke up and said to my husband, I'm going to set up a school.
Cue the ominous music.
Totally, I'm going to set up a school. And he swore a lot and was just like, oh no, because I think he immediately just knew that our lives weren't going to be as nice as they had been.
So what will this school look like? I mean, you just described a little bit of Sands, but give us the principles. How is this going to look different from the mainstream schools that you had seen?
So I'm really interested in the principles of democratic education. I'm really interested in the idea of self-determination, autonomy, that we are teaching our young people how to learn, and giving them a love of learning that hopefully will continue for the rest of their life. But I think the only way you can do that is to give them choice and to give them autonomy, really. I think there's other ways to do it, but I don't think it gets as deep, and I don't think it's as long-lasting or fulfilling, indeed, for anybody involved. So that's one strand of it. The other strand of it is that I'm partnering up with a social enterprise in South Wales called the Down to Earth Project, and the kids are going to build their own school. So they're going to design and build it, obviously they'll be working with architects and builders and all sorts of different people to help them realise their needs and what they might want, but they are going to physically build it as part of their education. And the idea is that once the school is built, it doesn't stop. That building component of it doesn't stop. So those kids, when they come to the end of their education, when they leave us, say, at 16, 17, they will take down something that they have built. So in a way, it would be sort of like a ritual, a symbol to show the end of their time with us, but also in terms of the story, the narrative of it, it's the older students then making room for the younger students to build what they need, what their needs and preferences are, which are going to be different, but also where the world has moved and new technological stuff that's happened, but also the newest thinking in sustainability models and stuff. So it's all about sort of deconstruction and construction, and the idea that we can never really educate en masse. It has to be for the group of people that you have. Yeah.
I'm going to push back on the... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. And then the third prong is that it will be free to attend, which is probably the most difficult bit and possibly the most radical bit. But the idea is that hopefully I'm going to go out into the world and convince lots of philanthropists to give me money for the first 5 years. But then after that the school will be completely sustainable, because the kids will be entrepreneurs and will set up their own businesses that maybe run from the school or on the school sort of grounds, or maybe completely separate from the school. But part of their education will also be setting up these businesses to run and fund the school. And so it can be their businesses, but there can also be other businesses which the community are involved with, etc., that fund the school. So the idea being that there's this self-sustaining system, but also running throughout it all is this idea of necessity. So there's a necessity there that drives it all, that the kids are building their classrooms in order to have a classroom to learn.
And it's Cardiff, so it will be raining, so they really need to build that classroom.
They really do need the classroom. But then also, with these businesses and stuff, because of the democratic education, so they will have a say in the running of the school and how the budget is spent, so all of that will be transparent. So they'll know that these certain businesses have to make a certain profit in order to fund the school.
So I want to come back to the choice and autonomy, because I feel like giving kids choice and autonomy is good in little bits. In mass and as a system can be challenging. But I know everyone in this room is probably wondering, what about the curriculum? Are you going to teach math and science, and are you going to assess math and science? In your blog post, she wrote a very beautiful blog post called Liberate the Child, which is sort of the MO for why she's starting this school. And you mentioned Britain's got the 5th largest economy, but doesn't do particularly well, 27th in science, 25th in math, 22nd in reading on PISA. So if you don't like the tests and you're starting something different, what are they going to learn in traditional subjects, and how are you going to assess them?
So in Wales, we've got a new curriculum coming in full in 2022 called the Donaldson Curriculum, which is built around all of the newest thinking in terms of education. So we'll be following the Donaldson Curriculum, which is essentially at the moment pretty open, pretty loose, but creativity is at the core of it. So
at the national curriculum, creativity is at the core of it.
Yes, yeah, in Wales. So I think that yes, we'll be teaching. We'll have everything on offer. We'll be teaching, all of the STEM subjects and arts and anything that anybody might want to learn. But because of the idea of it being democratic, and I suppose if enough people group together and want to learn something that isn't necessarily part of their curriculum, then all of those things start to become more possible. Because we haven't started yet and we haven't formed the culture of the school, and we don't know who these little children are or who the parents are, or what the wider community involvement is going to be, I can't really say for certain how we're going to do assessments and how we're going to do exams and all of that sort of stuff. At the moment I like the idea that we will have exams more as badges rather than the end point of the education, which I think is sort of self-defeating.
So badges as you go along. So I could take my biology A-level in 9th grade in year 10, or so just do it kind of when you want it. Yeah,
do it when you want it, when you feel ready for it. But also, maybe you can diversify, and it might not just be GCSEs, it might be NVQs, or all sorts of different qualifications, that it's more just like, I suppose, like in Scouts or Girl Guides or whatnot, that you get your little in little badges. And if exams really aren't for you and you're really absolutely sure about that, then exams aren't for you and we'll find a different pathway through.
So I want to talk about parents. You just mentioned parents. So I've covered quite a few startup schools in New York City, the Avenue School, the Blue School, which I actually think is an interesting model. Ken Robinson sits on the board, Dan Siegel sits on the board. Huge heart, huge minds, a lot of money, like all these things were in line. And the thing they failed to anticipate when they opened their doors with this very 21st century school was parents' anxiety. So all these parents came saying, we want something different, and then they got there and they panicked. And said, you're not doing things the way you should be doing them. And because it was a democratic school, they had a say. And it got really messy for a few years. How are you going to convince parents, even parents who want to take that leap, who look at the alternative and say, I don't like what's on offer there, to take the leap to this, which is just way different?
I suppose it's about constant communication. If it's about the democratic model, then there are now democratic digital platforms that we can utilize in order to really understand, anonymously as well a lot of the time, what are the most important issues to parents, what their anxieties are. They can take votes on different things. But I think that it's very difficult because we're all so conditioned. We're conditioned by our own education, and there's this sort of cyclical Stockholm syndrome that's in the ether, in the gene pool of everything to do with education, and we need to break the spell. As was it AJ was saying earlier, we're pretending a lot of the time. We're pretending because we've got so much other stuff to do and everything's going so fast and we just haven't got time to really sit back and reflect. The things that we're constantly talking about in education. We need to have deeper learning, more time for reflection, trust, relationships. Well, if we could, all of this stuff that we're espousing about education and what's important in education, if we could start actually living that in all of the processes that we're using in order to develop these educational models, and even in an event like this, if this could be constructed like we think education could be constructed, and essentially so much of it is about creativity, and creativity just needs to be practiced. The more you practice the creativity, the better you get, the more it comes naturally. It just starts to enter every area of your life. So if we're constantly thinking about how to make everything that we do more creative, it's naturally going to flow more into the education system and what everybody says is the most important thing in education nowadays.
Well, it also segues very well with what he was saying, because he was talking about the sort of dangers of incrementalism, and you're kind of saying, well, I'm throwing the whole thing, baby in the bathwater out, starting over in a weird way.
Absolutely.
I mean, using science and using this, but you really do want to kind of, the house he was showing, you're tearing it down. Right?
Tearing it down, but also I think, yes, in terms of what he was saying with the house, it does lead on nicely, because what I hope will happen is that we're constantly going to be rebuilding the house. And the way we're going to...
taking it down, putting it up, taking
absolutely.
it down.
And so it will always be what that small community needs. And the way that we're going to fund it is because it's part of the education. I'm really interested in ideas of co-construction. So why is it that the adults are making all of the decisions about everything to do with these young people's lives and what's important? We're deciding everything about what's important for them to know when they grow up. I think that they're a huge resource and we should start using them as such. They want to, so much of what we talk about in education as well is about real-world learning, real-world experience. Well, then put your money where your mouth is and don't just make it gestural. Like, make it real.
This is like project-based learning and experiential learning on steroids.
Yeah.
You want a project? Build your own school.
Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges you face so far?
The biggest challenges for me personally is that I have no idea how to do any of this. So I've been on the steepest learning curve of my entire life for the past 6 months. Just been researching, met hundreds of different people, been to loads of different schools. So that's been brilliant and interesting, but personally I've got to be careful that I don't burn out because it is really exciting and vital. Money, of course, how we're going to fund it, because I don't want to just I don't want it to be a fee-paying school. I think that, you know, that's not something that I want to be a part of or create more of. So that's really difficult. And I suppose the idea that it is so radically different, and because I'm from outside of the education system, so I'm going to really need to earn my stripes and get very credible people involved so that people will believe it's possible.
What kind of responses have you gotten from people? Good, bad, and ugly. I mean, be honest with people. I mean, the criticism she's gotten is you're a singer and an entertainer. What on earth are you doing in this world?
Yeah.
Give us a range of other responses you're getting.
So I originally announced my intention on Woman's Hour last year, and within the first...
It's a BBC program here.
Yeah, and within the first couple of weeks, I had like over 1,000 emails from all sorts of different people, parents, teachers, head teachers, town planners, everything. And people were so interested and hungry and wanted to help, and so that was great. It was really positive, and it really spurred me on to go, oh no, actually this is the right thing to do. I'm on the right path. So that's really fueled me. There's been this is my second education conference. My first education conference was at the SSAT, which is senior leaders, a union for senior leaders in schools in the UK. And I gave a 50-minute speech, which a lot of it was about co-construction and children's rights and this sort of stuff. And I expected that it was going to go down brilliantly, you know, that they would all be on their feet and, you know, it would just be fabulous. And it basically went down like a fart in a lift. And it taught me sort of how divided opinion is. And, you know, there's a lot of that Stockholm syndrome and, well, I know what I know, and this is the way that it was done, this is the way that I was taught, and this is how I've been trained, and all of that sort of stuff. Again, which is very deep in the gene pool and a very difficult cycle to break, in a similar way to parenting cycles. You know, you tend to parent the way that you were parented unless you start to recognize things and break the cycle, and, you know, which are sometimes bad habits. And I think it's just the same thing for the education system. So there's been a range of reactions, but I think that Rosa Parks quote at the end of AJ's speech, which is something like, you know, never be fearful if you know you're on the right track. And I have an insane amount of belief in myself, and I've had it for a long time, since I was a child. So I'm just holding strong to that, really, and I know it's going to be absolutely shaken to its roots. But as long as I hold on to that, and I keep in mind what I'm doing it for, which is for my own children and all the children that I know, a lot of whom are really suffering under this current system, then it'll be fine. It'll all be fine.
A good motto.
Yeah.
Be the change you want to see. Gandhi said that. I believe you're trying to live that. So I would be remiss if I did not end this, because I have such a unique guest here, if I didn't ask her to sing, which is probably not something you've seen at any of your others. See, here's your comparative advantage right here. So yeah. I'm going to ask her to sing, which I did warn her about.
Okay, do you fancy singing with me?
Absolutely. We should all stand up if we're going to do that. I think we should stand up. Everyone, up, please. If you're asleep, wake up. This is the moment. I am not going to sing, so it would be in the microphone. It would be terrible for you all.
Come on, you should.
I really can't, no.
So I'm imagining that we all know the health benefits of singing together. It really boosts the immune system, and even sometimes when you sing together in a big group, your heartbeats start to synchronize, which is very interesting. But really, it's like a very quick way to get to those social and emotional bonds quite quickly. So I thought that we could sing, and you may or may not know it, but it's from the film Charlie, what's it called? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and it's called Pure Imagination. Yeah? Hang on, I'm going to get a picture. Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see into your imagination. Maybe that's enough.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.